everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm kicking off the holiday season with 6 of my favorite Christmas and winter wreaths. Keep in mind that since this is a combination of a few of my videos put together, they are labeled a little bit out of order. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. Now let's get right into it. Moving right on into wreath number 1, the materials I used to make this one were 2 bundles of wood slices from Hobby Lobby, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, plaid ribbon from Walmart, my hot glue gun, jute, winter stems from Michaels, a bowl to measure out my wreath, and some scissors. To start this project, I'm using this bowl as a guide to help me measure my wreath. I'm setting out all of the larger slices that came in the bundle right around the edges of the bowl, and this is going to ensure that I have a nice even circle for my wreath. All of the wood slices were not exactly the same size, but I used the ones in the bundle that were close in size to each other. Next, I'm removing the bowl and then placing smaller wood slices right on top of the larger wood slices in the center where the 2 larger wood slices meet together. And I'm continuing this step all the way around my circle. Next, I'm attaching all of my wood slices together. I'm putting hot glue on both sides of my smaller top layer wood slices and then pressing them down onto the larger bottom layer slices right in the spot where I had already laid them out. And I'm continuing this step until I have all of my slices glued together. Next, I'm creating my bow. I'm measuring out this plaid ribbon for how long I want the bottom piece of my ribbon to be and then cutting that down to size. I'm measuring this burlap ribbon a little bit shorter than my large plaid piece of ribbon, and then measuring another piece of the plaid ribbon a little bit shorter than my burlap ribbon, and then another piece of burlap ribbon a little bit shorter than my second plaid piece of ribbon. I'm then creating circles with all 4 pieces of ribbon that I just cut. I'm attaching both ends of my ribbon together to form a circle, and this is going to help me create my bow. Once I have those all glued, I'm then going to be forming my bow by stacking my ribbon from the largest piece to the smallest piece. I'm then gathering all of my pieces of ribbon together in the middle and then taking a piece of jute and wrapping it right around the center of all of my pieces of ribbon and making sure that I tie it really tight. This is going to hold all of my pieces of ribbon together. Now I'm cutting a section of this plaid ribbon out and I'm placing it right in the center of my bow. I'm attaching both ends of this piece of ribbon along the back side of my bow using some hot glue. I'm then fluffing up all of my loops so that my bow looks nice and full. Next, I'm measuring out the tail ends of my bow with this plaid ribbon and I'm just cutting it down to size. I'm tying a piece of jute right in the center of that plaid ribbon that I just cut out to make the tail ends of my bow. To attach my piece of ribbon that's going to be my tails, I'm placing hot glue on the back side of my bow and then pressing the center of that tail piece of ribbon right over top of the glue. And then to attach my bow to my wreath, I'm placing hot glue on the top wood slice and then just pressing the bow over top of the glue. Next, I'm pulling apart some of this winter greenery that I picked up from Michaels. I'm pulling the pieces apart so that it's easier for me to place on my wreath around my bow. And to attach the greenery, I'm placing hot glue right onto the wood slices and then pressing the greenery over top. And I just attach them around my bow wherever I thought that they were needed. And to give my bow a more of a finished look, I'm cutting both ends in a diagonal. For the last step, I'm making my hanger with a piece of jute. I'm measuring the jute for how long I want my hanger to be, and then I'm attaching it right on the back side of my wreath using some hot glue. And this is my winter wood slice wreath all finished. I am so happy with how this one turned out, and it was so easy to create. Now that we're all finished with the first wreath, let's move on to wreath number 2. For this one, the materials I used were this willow wreath from Dollar Tree, striped ribbon from Walmart, pine cones that I picked up from Dollar General, winter stems from Michaels, my hot glue gun, Krylon spray paint in almond, folk art chalk paint in castle, deco art chalk paint in lace, paintbrushes, scissors, and some jute. For this wreath, I first started out by spray painting both sides of it with my Krylon spray paint in the color almond. Once that was completely dried, I really wasn't happy with the color, so I decided to add some of this deco art chalk paint in lace. And I wasn't too precise when I was painting it on. I just kind of painted it where I thought it needed a little bit more of a lighter color. After that color, I wanted to add a little bit of dimension, so I'm taking my chalk paint in the color Castle, and I'm just messily painting that all over the wreath, and I did do both sides in this color. I really like how it created a lot more dimension, and it gave it more of like a dirty rustic look, which I really liked. Next, I'm pulling apart some of these winter stems that I picked up from Michael's. I know that I'm not going to be using all of them for my wreath, so I'm just cutting off the ones that I'm going to be using. I'm then attaching the stems to my wreath. I'm zigzagging the stems as much as I can through the wreath, and then to make sure that they stay in place, I'm putting hot glue all around them and then holding it in place until the glue dries so that they don't move around. And I'm continuing to add more of this winter greenery throughout the bottom half of my wreath, the same as I did that first stem. I did end up using a couple different styles of this greenery because I really love the way that they all look together. Next, I'm attaching some pine cones in the bottom center of my wreath in between all of that greenery. I place the hot glue right on top of the wreath and then just press down the pine cones over top of the glue. I did hold the pine cones in place until the glue was dry so that they didn't move around. And I'm continuing to add some more smaller pine cones right above the other pine cones that I just attached. And then I wanted to have a little bit of greenery in between all of the pine cones. So I'm just placing some hot glue right onto the greenery and then pressing them in between all of the pine cones. And again, just holding those in place until they are completely dried. For the last step in making this wreath, I'm making my hanger. I'm using this striped ribbon that I picked up from Walmart. I'm measuring it for the length that I want my hanger to be and then just gluing both sides of the ribbon together. And this is my winter willow wreath all finished. I just love how sparkly and beautiful this one is, and again, this one was super easy to make and very inexpensive as well. Moving right into wreath number 1, the materials I used were this 10-inch grapevine wreath from Michael's, Christmas picks from Walmart, buffalo check ribbon from Dollar General, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, scissors, my hot glue gun, and I'm also using pliers. To start out, I'm using my pliers to cut the Christmas stems that I picked up from Walmart. This is going to help me be able to put the stems in the places that I want them to be without being too bulky. Next, I'm placing some hot glue right onto the grapevine wreath in the places I want to attach all of my greenery from my Christmas stems. When I have the greenery onto the hot glue, I'm letting it completely dry before I let go. Since they are a little bit heavier, I didn't want them to move around before the glue dried. I'm continuing this step until I have all of my greenery pieces from my Christmas stem attached where I want them. Now I'm gluing some of the berries that were on those stems around all of the greenery. I did them in a couple different directions, a few of them facing upward and a few of them facing downward, just like I did the greenery stems. And then they did have some of the little pine cones as well, so I'm just hot gluing those all around where I did the berries. Next, I'm making a bow to go on my wreath. I'm using a large piece of ribbon, a medium size, and a small size. The medium size one is going to be the burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and the large and small pieces are going to be the buffalo check ribbon. So I'm just cutting those down to size and then gluing the medium and small pieces of ribbon together to each form a circle. Then I'm stacking the ribbon, going from largest to smallest, gathering them together in the middle, and then using a piece of jute to wrap around the middle, and then I'm just tying that off in a knot. I'm cutting off the long ends of my jute and then fluffing the loops of my ribbon so that I have a nice full bow. To attach my bow, I'm placing some hot glue right onto the grapevine wreath and then just pressing the bow over top to fully attach it. I'm adding a few more berries above the bow and below the bow just to fill in some space that was still there, and then also adding a few more pine cones. The last step in making this wreath is just cutting both ends of my checked ribbon into a triangle shape. This is the wreath all finished. I love how it turned out. It only took me a few minutes to do, and I'm really loving the red and black buffalo check this year. Moving into wreath number 2, for this project I used an 8-inch wire wreath form from Dollar Tree, red ribbon from Dollar Tree, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, Christmas picks from Walmart, jute, scissors, and my hot glue gun. To start out, I've already attached my ribbon to the bottom wire of my wreath ring by making a knot. Next, I'm making the bubbles for my wreath. I'm pushing some of that ribbon right up through the first slot in my wreath form. To make the bubble stay in place, I'm twisting the ribbon twice towards me, and then I'm going to be creating another bubble, just pushing some more of that ribbon up through the outer slot of my wire form. And again, to make the bubble stay in place, I'm twisting the ribbon twice towards me. I'm continuing the steps of pushing the bubbled ribbon up through the first slot of my wire form, twisting the ribbon twice towards me to hold the bubble into place, then making another bubble with my ribbon and then pushing that up through the outer slot in the wreath form, and again just twisting the ribbon twice to hold it into place. When I get to the end of my roll of my ribbon, I'm tying the ribbon off on the bottom wire of my wreath form, and then to start a new roll of ribbon, I'm doing the same thing as I did in the beginning, just tying the ribbon on the bottom wire of my wreath form. And then continuing to make my bubbles the same as I was doing before. I am pushing all of the bubbles close to each other as I'm moving along my wreath so that I have a nice full wreath in the end. This ribbon was a little bit tricky to work with because of the texture, so if you're going to be using this exact ribbon, just keep that in mind. After I've made all of the bubbles with my ribbon, to secure it and hold it into place, I'm tying it off around one of the wreath wires. Some of the ribbon got a little crushed along the way, so here I'm just fluffing out all of the ribbon so that I have a nice full wreath. I'm creating the bow to go on my wreath. I'm using a large, a medium, and a small piece of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and the medium and small pieces of ribbon I'm hot gluing the ends together to form a circle. I'm making this bow just like I did with the bow on my first wreath. Then I'm stacking all 3 pieces of ribbon together, going from largest to smallest, gathering them together in the middle, and then tying that around the middle with a piece of jute and just making a knot to make sure that everything's nice and secure. This is my favorite technique in making bows, as many of you probably know if you've seen any of my other DIYs. I love how easy they are to create, and they're not too over the top and busy. They don't take over your project. Here I'm fluffing out my loops to make my bow nice and full. Next, I'm cutting the stems of this Christmas pick from Walmart using some pliers. This is going to help me glue these on individually exactly in the places I want. Next, I'm putting hot glue right onto the ribbon on the left side of my wreath, and then just placing some of those stems right on top of the glue to attach them. I'm then attaching the bow that I just made right onto the stems using some hot glue. I'm adding more of those Christmas picks right underneath my bow, attaching them again with some hot glue. I'm working in small sections when gluing these Christmas picks down. I'm gluing down one small piece at a time so that I don't overdo it and have so much going on the side of my wreath. I didn't want it to be too heavy. Next, I'm cutting both ends of my ribbon on an angle. For the very last step, I'm attaching some jute to the top wire of my wreath form to make my hanger. This is my Christmas bubble wreath all finished. This one took me a little bit longer to do because of the texture of the ribbon, but I really love how it turned out. Now moving on to wreath number 3 and the final wreath for today. The products I used were this 12-inch lamb's ear wreath from Hobby Lobby, Christmas stems from Dollar Tree, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, scissors, jute, and my hot glue gun. To start out, I'm taking the berries off of this Christmas stem that I picked up from Dollar Tree. This is going to help me be able to put the berries on exactly where I want them when attaching them to my wreath. To attach the berries to my wreath, I'm pulling up on the lamb's ears and setting down my berries exactly where I want them, then taking a piece of jute and then just tying the berry stem right around the stem of my lamb's ear wreath. I'm making sure that I'm pulling really tight on the jute so that my berries stay right in place. I'm continuing the step of attaching my berries to my lamb's ear stem with some jute until I have the berries going all the way around my wreath. After I've applied all of my berries, I'm then making my bow to go on my wreath just like I did the other bows for the other 2 wreaths in this video. I'm using the 3 different size pieces of ribbon and then just gathering them together and tying them off. I did hot glue the medium and small pieces together to form circles, stacked all 3 pieces of ribbon, gathered them together in the middle, and then tied a piece of jute around them to form a bow, and then fluffing out the loops to make my bow nice and full. I'm then cutting both ends of my ribbon into a triangle shape. For the last step in this wreath, I'm attaching the bow at the very top of my wreath using some hot glue. This is my berry lamb's ear wreath all finished. This one was also really easy and inexpensive to make. For DIY number 1, I'm making a pinecone wreath. For this one, I'm using an 8-inch wreath form from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using the back side of the wreath form as the front side of my wreath. And I'm also using some of these pine cones that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. What I first started doing was just laying out all of my pine cones onto my wreath form to see exactly how I want them to be before I start attaching them. And what I ended up doing was doing a large pine cone, then right next to that one I would do a smaller one, then a larger one, then a smaller one, and just switch those up all the way around the wreath form. Once I had it all figured out how I wanted to have them placed, then I started attaching them to my wreath form. And to do that, I'm just placing hot glue on the back side of each pine cone and then pressing it down onto the wire wreath form. After I had all of my pine cones attached to the front of my wreath, I then started attaching some of this greenery that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. This is part of their Christmas florals, and it's already pulled off of the stem because my son got a hold of it in the car and decided to just pick it all apart. I did end up cutting each little piece of greenery down so that they were shorter for me to place in between each pine cone. And to attach them, I just placed some hot glue on the ends of each stem and then just pressed those down in between each cone. After I had that greenery attached all the way around, I'm then flipping my wreath over, and now I'm going to be attaching that same greenery on the back side of each pine cone so that I have the greenery going all the way around the wreath and not just in between the cones, which I wish I would have just placed the greenery on the wreath form before I put on the pine cones, but I didn't, so I'm doing it this way. But if you are going to make this wreath, just keep that in mind that you can just do the greenery first and then do the pine cone on top of the greenery, maybe just to save yourself this extra step. Next, I'm going to be adding a second kind of greenery to my wreath. I really love this one because it has the white tips on it, and I think by adding the second kind, it's just really going to add so much more to my wreath. And to attach it, I'm doing the same thing I did with the other. I'm just cutting it down a little bit to make it fit better, and then just hot gluing it in between each pine cone. This, I believe, is either from Joann Fabrics or Michaels, and I did get it last year. But usually they have the same things every year or very similar, so you should be able to pick something up similar pretty much anywhere. I guess you could probably get stuff like this at Dollar Tree as well. But once I had all of it attached in between each pine cone, I wanted to place it on the inside too to cover up some of that wire that you could see from my wreath form. And again, just did it the same way as I did the other ones, just cut it down and hot glued it going all the way along the inside of the wreath form. Originally, I was going to use one of these black and red buffalo check bows from Dollar Tree on the very top of my wreath, but I ended up not using it because I thought this wreath just needed to be a little bit more simple. So what I ended up doing was just adding a piece of jute to the very top as my hanger. And here is my pinecone wreath all finished. I absolutely love how this one turned out. And what was even better, it is super affordable to create, and I'm going to be able to use it all through winter, not just with my holiday decor. Now moving right along into DIY number 5. For this one, I'm using 2 different size grapevine wreaths. I'm using a 6-inch and an 8-inch. The 8-inch one I believe is from Dollar Tree, and the 6-inch one is from Michaels. I'm also using this little snowman hat ornament from Hobby Lobby. It is unfinished. First thing I did was just cut off the tag from my hat, and then I painted it with my folk art chalk paint in the color Rich Black. I only had to do one coat of this paint. Then I needed to attach my two wreaths together, so I just put the small wreath on top of the larger wreath, and then I used a piece of jute to tie the two together. And then to make sure that it was super secure, I did a second piece of jute on the other side to tie them together. And then of course I wanted to really make sure that they were not going to move around, so I just added some hot glue in between both of the wreaths to just make sure that they are going to be nice and secure, and then you won't see that hot glue when I add some stuff later on, like this piece of fabric. This is from Hobby Lobby. I love this fabric so much, and all of the ends of the fabric from where I've cut it in the past are really frayed looking, and I thought it would be perfect for this nice little rustic snowman. As you can see here, I just worked with the fabric, tying it around the two wreaths and then using some hot glue to keep that fabric in place. Next, I'm adding some greenery around the scarf of my snowman. These I believe are from Hobby Lobby, and I just cut them down and then placing them all around my scarf and attaching them with some hot glue. As you have probably noticed, I like cutting my greenery pieces down before attaching them. I always like adding a little bit at a time so that it doesn't look too bulky. I'm also using some of these berry stems from Hobby Lobby, and I added those around with the greenery around the scarf. Then I added some more greenery pieces. These ones have little white tips on them, and I thought that that would add a little bit of dimension, so I just added those using some hot glue. And then also this large button, I just used hot glue and attached it to the very front of my scarf. And then back to my little top hat here, I wanted to add some jute to the top of it, so I used some hot glue to hold the jute in place, and then I wrapped the jute several times around the base of the hat, and then I just cut that off and hot glued the end of it down. And then to add some detail to my hat, of course, I added some greenery using some hot glue. I just cut down several pieces of greenery and hot glued them going in both directions, and then I also added a little piece of that berry stem to add more detail. I also added some greenery that has some fake snow on it. I wanted to add just a little bit of this white color, and I hot glued those right behind the greenery that I had already added. And then the last step is just me hot gluing the hat on the very top wreath. And here is my snowman wreath all finished. This one, again, such an easy project. I've seen so many different styles of these snowman wreaths online, but I really love the rustic look of this one. And now for the sixth DIY today, I'm going to be making a poinsettia wreath. And for this one, I'm using this 6-inch wreath ring from Hobby Lobby. And then I'm also using 3 packs of these poinsettia flowers in the Christmas section from Hobby Lobby. And what I'm first doing is taking my flowers, and I'm going to be removing all of the little stickers that are on the back of the flowers. You could use the stickers if you want, but I'm going to be gluing mine on. So I just continued to take the stickers off of 11 of the little flowers, and then I'm just setting them on my wreath ring to see how many I need. And like I said, I ended up using 11 of them, and I just wanted to have them all spaced out before I actually started gluing them down. So once I had them all set, then I just started hot gluing each flower down onto the wreath ring. I continued this step until all of the flowers were glued down, and that was it for this project. Could not have been easier, and I think this wreath turned out really cute and it looks so high-end. And that was it for all 7 of my Christmas and winter themed wreaths. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing, and please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching.